Let's take a look at some of the dumbest ways people have died in human history, ranging from death by beard to death by cow fart, and even the dumbest death of all time. Number 9. Death by beard. As humans, we know the beard to be one of the manliest things you can have, with the longest beard being over 17 feet. But could you actually imagine dying from your own beard? Well, in the 16th century, Hans Steiger, who was the mayor of Austria at the time, happened to be running around with his beard hanging out free. Keep in mind that his beard was over 4 foot long, and he usually kept it rolled up and put inside of his pocket. But during this time, there was actually a fire roaring in the middle of town. This caused a lot of commotion, leading him to have his beard hanging free rather than tucked away safely in his pocket. This, however, was a fatal mistake because as he was running down the stairs during this commotion, he ended up tripping on his own beard, falling down the stairs and breaking his neck. Getting killed by your own beard has to be pretty embarrassing. I can only imagine his last thoughts were wishing he shaved that day, but it wasn't all bad because after the fire, the townspeople actually decided to cut off his beard for him and preserved it as a town heirloom, which is hardly believable, but you can actually see the 450-year-old beard today inside of the district museum in Austria. Number 8. Death by hot dog. If you ever seen a food eating competition, you know that it's one of mankind's greatest achievements. Being able to stuff massive amounts of food down your face in a short period of time while others attempt to beat you is just one of the true joys of life. With people actually training for these competitions and making it their entire life goal to be able to scarf down as much food as possible inside of the shortest amount of time, which makes this death truly hard to swallow, involving a 47-year-old man on 4th of July who entered a hot dog eating competition, and during this competition, it seemed to be going pretty well. This was actually the exact same day Joey Chestnut ate 61 hot dogs in only 10 minutes. But this guy definitely wasn't as lucky or skilled because he actually choked on a hot dog during the competition and shortly died of suffocation since they couldn't get the hot dog out of him. This is honestly really sad, and I feel bad for him because his tombstone probably says death by wiener, which is a fate worse than death. Number 7. Rooster stabbing. You may be asking, how does one die from a rooster? Well, in 2007, a man from California was doing illegal rooster fighting, which involves putting 2 roosters inside of an arena and forcing them to fight each other, otherwise they are either beaten or harmed, and usually bets are placed on which rooster will win, as it is a fight to the death. Obviously, rooster fighting is illegal because of animal rights, but that definitely did not stop him. And on one day, this man decided that he was going to strap a knife around his rooster's leg in order to better equip the rooster to kill the other rooster in the arena, but this definitely backfired. As he attempted to make the roosters fight, his rooster, which had the razor-sharp knife equipped to it, turned around and stabbed him inside of the calf. He later died from his wounds after having sought no medical attention, probably because he was embarrassed after having gotten stabbed by his own rooster. Let this be known as a reason to never ever give a rooster a knife. Number 6. Coconut mold. You may have heard of people shaking coconut trees and the coconut falling on their head. While definitely kind of stupid, I find this to be more of a reasonable death, as no one really wants to climb up an entire coconut tree, as they could be 80 to 100 feet, but the story is not at all as reasonable as that. This involving a Malaysian man in 2001 happening to acquire a coconut, but unlike a normal person, did not use a hatchet, a knife, an axe, or even a rock to open up his coconut, but instead opted to use his head. And for reference, opening up a coconut requires 200 to 400 pounds of strength, which is the equivalent of 2 adult mountain lions, which is insane when it's compared to your head, which only requires 500 pounds to crush completely. But despite that, this guy decided that it would be a perfect idea to continue bashing himself over the head with this coconut until it broke, which it never actually did, leading him to just have an extremely cracked open skull and led to his death. Number 5. Cow fart. In 2021, 3 brothers were actually trying to fix a manure pump inside of a manure pit, which is basically just a whole bunch of poop instead of a giant pit filled with all sorts of farts and gases and methane. But as they were trying to fix it, they actually died from the sheer stench and inhalation of this disgusting gas, causing all 3 of them to pass away. So the smell was literally so bad, it was deadly. Number 4. Venom. In the 1930s, there was a man named Carl who was a zoologist. Now, this guy actually was a famed zoologist and had multiple snakes named after him. So he was definitely qualified to be handling them, which is why a person actually came to him to identify a certain snake that he had found. Now, at the time, they did not know, but this snake was actually poisonous. And while the zoologist was examining it, it managed to bite him and left a 2 to 3 millimeter puncture wound. And instead of going to the hospital and getting it looked at, this zoologist decided that this snake was apparently not poisonous, even though he had no idea what this mystery snake really was. And instead of going to the hospital, he decided to record the effects of the bite. He recorded strong nausea but without vomiting as his first injury. An hour later, he recorded strong chill and shaking, followed by a fever of 101. Bleeding of mucous membranes in the mouth began about 5:30, apparently mostly from the gums. You have to be a special kind of stupid to be bleeding from your gums with a fever and still not going to the hospital, which this guy happened to be. I have no idea how this guy was just normally recording his symptoms as if he wasn't literally bleeding from the gums as he wrote. Then afterward, he casually took a nap and ate 2 pieces of milk toast. He then recorded in the morning that he was urinating blood and vomiting undigested food. And his last recording said he was bleeding in his nose and mouth and his gums, but apparently not excessively. Again, this guy had to be a special kind of stupid to not go to the hospital after bleeding out of literally every hole in his face. Like, at this point, I feel like anybody would know that the snake was obviously poisonous and they should go to the hospital. Despite that, this guy was actually found inside of his bed, and the autopsy showed that he was bleeding from his lungs, eyes, heart, kidney, and brain at the time of his death. Number 3, parachute inventor. Being an inventor is definitely a risky job because you never know how successful your inventions might actually be, but it's even riskier when you're a parachute inventor, which an inventor named Franz was. And he decided after only testing his parachute a couple times on dummies that it wasn't realistic enough and that he himself needed to climb the Eiffel Tower, which is over 1,000 feet tall, and jump off of it to test his parachute, which he then did, sneaking his way up as it was definitely illegal. And as he fell, I'm sure his last realization was that he was a horrible inventor because it malfunctioned, causing him to fall all the way to his death. Number 2, fireworks. It's no shock that people love to see things explode in the sky, with fireworks shows being extremely entertaining, whether they're inside of your backyard barbecue or at a live event. Especially during 4th of July, you'll see Americans lighting up red, white, and blue fireworks to celebrate independence. But what people aren't independent from is alcohol, and this 19-year-old happened to be under the influence when he decided that it would be a good idea to light a firework off his head. And not that it would actually make that much of a difference, but this happened to be a quite massive firework. So he decided that adequate protection would be a hard hat. But despite him using this hard hat, whenever he lit the firework, it still managed to blow off half his face, ripping his skin, and immediately giving him 3rd-degree burns. Safe to say, it is not safe to light a firework off your head. Number 1, orange peel. Bobby Leach was a man who went down Niagara Falls inside of a barrel. With Niagara Falls being over 187 feet down, this was extremely risky and could have led to an extremely horrible death. But ironically, he actually did not die from this at all. Sure, he was gravely injured, being bruised and bleeding, but he definitely survived, having been the 2nd person to actually do this. But later in life, he did not get so lucky as he managed to die from slipping on an orange peel, which honestly is better than a banana peel, but not by much. Thanks for watching. That'll cost a subscription, and I accept likes as tips.